Hi, Shawna Karrasch here with a question, an Ask Shawna question from Barbara. Okay, Barbara says, I noticed in the, now that's a backup, and boy it sure is, that you seem to click and not treat once at the very beginning, and once he has backed up, click and treat when he returns to you. I've thought I heard a click with no treat in a few other videos as well. Could this be? I thought every click equals treat. Also, I noticed you gave the verbal and a cue before the horse knew what he was doing when you were training the second horse who did not know back up. I was taught better to get the behavior started and add the cue once it's well on his way and can shape the final version as desired. You get a very straight backup and very fast and long backup. You raise your criteria quickly and avoid getting stuck. Do you jackpot for exceptionally good backups? I also notice you withdraw briefly for the horse not paying attention. Did you do this for marine mammals too? Thank you. You are very, very kind and a in-tune trainer and very, very effective. Okay, Barbara, you hit on some hot buttons for people. And mostly these principles these were taught to people in the dog world. And so from what I've seen, they've come through the dog training and kind of a particular school of thought through there and has become accepted. Marine mammal training, we don't feed every bridge signal, every click. We use whistles as verbal as well as we used to use clicks. We don't give them food for every single time. We will actually use other forms of reinforcement as well. So we're big on the secondary reinforcers, and that just goes back to those schedules of reinforcement and the intermittent schedule of reinforcement. So we mix it up a lot and intentionally. It raises criteria. It also helps to take a lot of the focus off of the food. If everything has to be about food, you unintentionally draw a lot of attention to the food, that they are doing it for the food, not for the relationship. And very quickly, if you start to, I use I use other reinforcements quite a bit, and I find there's times when my horses have not been interested in food for whatever reason. We shipped, or just other things. It was hot weather, we had shipped, they were up all night, whatever it was. And those horses will not take food, and they'll do every behavior up to criteria. And that's because the relationship is actually with the training and with me and the enjoyment of the training than it is actually 100% about the food. And then there's also times I've worked with horses, like it'll be like the first day of a clinic, and I'll be coming back to their stall to do another session with them. They'll be eating their food, which is the same food I have in my bucket. They will leave their food and come to the gate and hopefully in hopes of coming out to do a training session, yet they have the same food I have and they have more of it in their bucket. So I think we actually do ourselves a disservice if we think it's all about the food. But on the other hand, that doesn't mean I dilute the effectiveness of the bridge signal. I want to make sure that there's still a very high rate of reinforcement with that bridge signal, with that click, so that it really holds its value. Dr. Sue McDonald, she founded the Equine program at the University of Pennsylvania New Bolton's equestrian school, or not equestrian, their veterinary school. And she found if she fed 1 in 10 behaviors, she maintained the behavior. I would never just go down to 1 in 10. I just can't do it myself. But by doing it here and there for some, it actually helps to raise the criteria, it raises their enthusiasm, it minimizes their sense of entitlement, and it takes the attention a little bit off of the food and allows us to really develop that relationship and the rapport with them. So that is something that is not practiced in the marine mammal world, the one click equals food. It is, we very much use secondary reinforcers quite a bit. And again, that's bound and founded in the behavior principles that have to do with intermittent schedule of reinforcement. So it's really a better way to go. And did you know, if you actually fed every single behavior, it would increase at first and that would start to decrease slightly. I think that's interesting. And also they did a study, and this is another thing that I think is really interesting, where they give different animals food. I remember reading about this study way back when I was at SeaWorld. They gave different animals food, so free food. Then they took the free food away and taught them to hit a lever for food. And then they gave them both options back. The animals tended to ignore the free food and go to the lever for food. Again, to me, that reinforces the fact that it is about the performance, about the training, it's about the whole entire thing. It's not just about the food. Otherwise, they'd skip the performance and just go right to the food. So I know it's a hot topic, and I don't mind if people click and feed each and every one that they do. That's really up to you. I just know that I have gotten great response and great attitude and really can raise criteria and really maintain that relationship if I really have used the secondary reinforcers. But not all the time. It's just kind of you know, it is still a very high rate of reinforcement associated with that bridge signal. Okay, so that was the first one. Next one goes about the cue. Now, when you're giving a cue, if you're teaching something that is not guided through each and every step, then I wouldn't add the cue in, or it's called a discriminative stimulus. It's a thing that says, this is what I'm looking for. I wouldn't add that in if there was some ambiguity to it, if it wasn't really clear. When you're using the target in there deliberately, as I say, I basically tell him to go to the target. As the target's presented, I'm guiding him and setting him up for success, so I'm not getting a lot of floundering through there. So very quickly, and again, this is something we use at SeaWorld, but we guide them through things. There's not free shaping really going on here. We're saying, do this and look for the target. And what I find with that, very quickly what'll start happening, and happened with Bugs as I continued on, as you give the signal, you see him look for that target. And now we begin. He knows what that signal means, is to look and go and do. And then the target can guide him through the behavior. So it actually sets him up for success. If there's free shaping, there's ambiguity, if there's a lot of, they're not going to be making the right decision, we're not setting them up for that, or it's just not happening the way the training is going, then I wouldn't put it in so early. But as long as you're really setting them up for success and you're showing them clearly what to do next, then it is certainly fine to do it. Again, it's something we always did in the marine mammal world. You know, it's a big industry that has lots and lots of success behind it and lots of years of experience behind it too. So it's very well founded. It's and using the a lot of times what I start off with is working behaviors. Like if I start to teach a spin, I will say target, and I step that direction, and the target is, you know, over here, and he starts to follow it around. Well, pretty soon, and I tend to do two hands, that's just because that's what I do, and as they go, and pretty soon, that's a working signal, but it's telling him to go to the target. And pretty soon, we fade the target out, and he remains with the working signal. So I can continue to keep my cues, my discriminative stimulus, to be pretty much a working one. So I just kind of pick it early and stick with it. But with the target involved, you are setting them up for success. So I hope that makes enough sense to you. And if you have more questions about it, I love that you bring them up, because sometimes I hear people say it and they're like, you have to do that. And I'm like, no, actually you don't. But it's okay if you do. I'm fine one way or another. It's just there's more behavior principles out there than I think a lot of people know about. There's so much more. And if we just learn from one source, we get limited. But if we continue to look beyond that and look what they've done for years and years, as well as the new stuff, you're going to find a lot more information, a lot more tools you can use, and you can try and do what you like. Another thing I want to point out about the feeding every time, if you've set your horse up to be kind of entitled, like you've said, I feed every single time, and it is about the food, and it's in the very beginning, I kind of start shaping it, they will then think, well, I always get the food, you didn't give me the food, now it is about the food. So you can get that kind of attitude if you've taught them that this is how it goes. So I will kind of back off just a little bit, and I use the secondary reinforcers, I use my excitement, I use my enthusiasm, and also I will use a behavior that, particularly like with Mint, you saw with a backup. Backup is solid for him. So it has the conditioned reinforcement, the operant conditioning, or the classic conditioning continues to go on and on and on and on with all the pieces of training. It doesn't stop once we condition the clicker. So what happens is a behavior that he's done over and over and over again, it has developed into a conditioned reinforcer. So by giving him a signal for a behavior that he knows, you've said you've just earned another opportunity for reinforcement. And that in itself is a reinforcer too. So that's a little bit more about it. And I could go on and on. And if you have more questions, I'd be happy to talk about it. Anyway, so I think that, one more thing that you asked about, raise criteria quickly. Do you jackpot for especially good backups? Yes, for sure. When they're getting it and they just, especially in the beginning, when it's good, I just jackpot a lot, or early bridge sometimes. Like when they just start to go step, step, I click and say, that's it. So that in itself is a bit of a reward. So then I reward more. So I'm a heavy-handed rewarder, honestly, as far as feeding goes, but I do like to use those secondaries in there, but it all kind of balances out. So definitely I look for, and also keep in mind, one of the biggest things I'm looking for is attitude. Attitude to me is paramount. I don't care if I got the most fancy, biggest boldest behavior, if it's done with a poor attitude, I don't want anything to do with it. So to me, I'm really shaping attitude. So when I see my horse start to kind of fire off in a good attitude, I would say, that's it, that's all I'm looking for. So that also helps to keep that straightness, it helps to raise the criteria, it helps that relationship, and that's all part of it. Let me see, did I get everything? And all of that I basically did learn with the marine mammals, because you asked that one too, so yes. Anyway, so I hope that answers your questions. If anybody has questions along those lines or different lines, please don't hesitate to ask. And I really appreciate you kind of going into some topics that are really kind of challenging for people, because it's all good, it all works, you know. So if you want to do it one way, it's okay, but don't be limited, because there is a lot of ways to, a lot of other things you can implement as well. Anyway, that was kind of wordy, so that's it for now. Until next time, enjoy getting your horse on target. Bye.